as parents, it's extra important to not only tune into your current state of arousal, but then figure out what's going to work for you to get into that optimal zone so that you can reach your child. And we call it co-regulation.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Polaris Connection, your podcast that connects parents of autistic children with industry experts and proven results. I am your host, Brad Broyles, and I'm here with my sensory smart challenger co-host, Nathan Palmer.
Brad, thank you. You know, I like to pretend that I'm sensory smart, but honestly, I'm kind of sensory novice, but I think we have somebody here with us that is a lot more sensory smart than I ever could hope to be.
I know. We are so excited to have Lindsey Biel all the way from New York City to come join us today at the Polaris Connection. Lindsey, thank you so much for being part of our show today.
It's a pleasure to join you. Thanks for the invite.
Well, we've been kind of, I should say, social media stalking you for a while. We love what you do. We love your books that you've produced. A quick background, you have over 25 years of experience working with babies, children, and teens and adolescents in the autistic space as an occupational therapist. And you have your master's degree from New York University in occupational therapy. Is that correct?
That's right. And I work with adults too now.
Ooh, okay.
And it's 27 years. Time just keeps going on and on. Yeah.
My goodness. You know, that's something, thank you for adding that, Lindsey, because I think a lot of the dialogue around autism, and it's not that it's a new thing, it's been around a long time, but the scope of what defines the spectrum, I think, has kind of grown in recent years. And so a lot of it seems like the tools and supports are geared towards a younger crowd. And, you know, my son's on the spectrum. He's an adolescent. He's a teenager. And the question my wife and I keep asking ourselves is, there's all these things out there for kids, but what about older teens and young adults? And I think it's a space that needs more support. So I'm so glad that you're helping to champion that effort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. You know, it's a couple of things. Number one, when you're doing something for 27 years, even if you start with early intervention with a 2-3-year-old, they 27 years later, I'm going to weddings and, meeting their babies. So they do become adults and still have some sensory processing challenges. And then also during the pandemic, when, I don't know how it was out by you, but in New York City, everyone was at home.
Yeah. Same.
So we all pivoted to virtual learning. And a lot of parents observed what's going on with their kids and sort of recognized from a sensory standpoint that, hey, I've got stuff too. I never really realized it. And the things that I'm watching Lindsey doing with my child could really help me too. So I started getting adult clients who had never been diagnosed, or, maybe much less, needed much less support, recognizing like, hey, I got stuff going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, adults too.
If I can just take a quick aside, Brad, I'm going to interject on just a parent side for a moment. The more, Lindsey, that I am familiar with neuroscience and the principles of regulation, the more I'm convinced it is not just a field for sensory sensitive people or just the autistic population. All of us need tips and tricks on how to regulate. All of us need to be more body aware on when we get triggered and our coping strategies. And I remember when I first learned the term stimming for kids, and our son has his method just like anybody, but the more I started watching people as they would present, and they kind of have we call them nervous tics, right? The thing that people might tap or they might rock or sway. And really they are overgeneralized forms of stimming. They are our coping mechanisms, our physical ways of trying to address a neurological discomfort. And so I wonder if you could just speak a little bit about just that, the general nervous system. Like OT is not just a support for sensory people. It's something I think we all need to become more familiar with in our regular dialogue.
Right. So, thinking about the nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord and the body and all the nerves and all that. The hope is always reaching that optimal state of arousal where we're just kind of like nice and moderated and regulated and we're doing great in our nervous system. And you can have brainwave patterns, which are pretty smooth. That's what we all hope for. That's the so-called optimal state of arousal. Well, some people are kind of under aroused, right? So they're down lower. And other people tend to run on a higher arousal level. So their nervous system is much more activated and ready to respond. So yeah, I mean, certainly our loved ones who are autistic can have some serious difficulties getting to that optimal state of arousal. But you're right, we all have that. And as parents, it's extra important to not only tune into your current state of arousal, but then figure out what's going to work for you to get into that optimal zone so that you can reach your child. And we call it co-regulation, right? You want to co-regulate with your child. Well, it starts with you, right? You need to be regulated. We can't fake it. Not really. Our kids are so smart and so perceptive and pick up on everything. Like, there's no hiding anything from these kids, right? So we need to figure out tools that we can use. And, while there are some occupational therapists out there working in the world of wellness. So, but it's not, how do I put this, billable, insurance reimbursed occupational therapy for, medically necessary, blah, 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 blah. So, but it is about finding out what's going to help you regulate. Often it's movement, right? Getting some exercise, doing yoga, just stretching for a minute, taking a break, taking a walk, walking around if you can't take a walk because you're with your kids, just walking around your house for a little while, doing some regulating breathing, having some water, just taking a moment, catching yourself red-handed, being like high arousal. That's the first step, right? So taking those steps is super important.
So, like, for our listeners right now who might be driving a car, walk around the home, listening to us, to some of the tricks that you're saying, hey, to kind of get more into that optimal level of self-regulation, drinking water, that was something that I didn't even think about. Walking
super
around.
Easy.
What is it about like water that I guess helps regulate the mind?
Well, we're made of so much water, right? Hugely consisting of water, and half of us walk around dehydrated all the time. So whenever you have water, you're giving your body and your brain the fluid that it needs to be fluid, right? And it's also that moment of self-care, and it's that oral motor thing. We all self-regulate through our mouths. It starts when we're, babies, probably when we're in the womb, right? So we still self-regulate that way. So having that water just it resets what we call the vagal tone, the vagus nerve, which runs from deep in the body all the way up to the brain. It resets that so that it does help us calm down quite a bit.
No, I was also thinking about like breathing. You brought that up with breathing. You brought that up with movement. Any kind of advice that you would do like on a breathing technique that's really simple that our audience can use?
There's so many. I'm going to teach you 5-finger breathing in a minute.
Oh, I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm ready.
But before I do that, I want to say as an aside, if your child needs to make noise, you're not going to start with 5-finger breathing. You're going to start with dinosaur breaths or, lion breaths or choo-choo train breaths, whatever your child's really into. taking those loud, like the line breath, roar, making a lot of noise. The minute you make a lot of noise, you're going to exhale deeply and then inhale deeply. So that's something. So that's one technique.
So everybody that's driving the car right now, do a dinosaur or a lion roar right now.
Okay, we're going to give them time. Yeah. Do 5 of those, actually. And give people a chance. And I'll have some water.
Go ahead, Nathan. Do it.
No, and listen, I'm just going to throw in a little interjection here. It may sound corny, but I can tell you the more I understand and appreciate the world of neuroscience, the more you have to appreciate there are multiple systems going on in your body. And Brad, you didn't intentionally mean to, but before you said, why does drinking water help calm your mind? It's not the mind. The mind and the nervous system are different systems, but they link. And so being aware of our own level of regulation is so important. That you used a term, Lindsey, about co-regulation earlier. More frequently in parent-child relationships, I see codependency, where our state of being is determined by the other person's. We're not grounded in ourselves, we're grounded in somebody else. And if they get elevated, we get elevated. And that doesn't work because we need to be the regulated version so they can ground in us. And if you think of like electricity, a lot of people advocate walking barefoot outside or grounding yourself with the earth. And if you've ever given a static shock to somebody, like when you're both charged, that transfer happens. And so if you're both elevated, there's nowhere for that energy to go. And this idea of regulation is almost a grounding technique where you're providing a way for your child's energy to have a place to cope and to lower. You're being that baseline. And it is so critical for us as adults to not just be aware of our state, because knowing we're heightened doesn't help unless we have these tools to soften it. So for those that did the dinosaur breaths or the lion breaths, you will feel a physical sensation after having done it of being more calm and regulated. That's the whole function. It's a body hack that then helps the mind also be calm. It's a dual system.
That's right. And, there are reasons behind it. You've oxygenated your body in a much richer way. And that does help just everything calm down, basically. So if you tell your child, you're all hyped up, like, hey, you're out of control. You need to calm down. I know no one's talking to their kids like this, but
Never.
You need to calm down. And you're up here. The child's going to stay up there right with you because our kids are like match us. So if we can manage to slow our voices and lower our pitch, that it changes the temperature of the room. It's like I will always dim the lights right away. It's just immediate shift. I did mention the 5-finger breathing. So I want to teach you that. I know we don't have visuals, but I want you, if you're not driving, to outstretch your hand so that you have your 5 fingers separate in front of you. And with your other hand, you're going to take the pointer of your other hand and you're going to be tracing up each finger and breathing in as you go up, holding at the top, and then exhaling as you go down. And we're going to do 5 of those. And I'm going to do it making a lot of noise because, again, I want to teach you the rhythm that we're looking for. But also when I make some noise, I'm really inhaling and exhaling. So I'm going to travel up 1 finger and I start with my thumb. I go. Slower you can do it, the better. Now, just take a moment and check in if you were able to do it. How that changed how you might be feeling. Sometimes if you're doing this with your child, you may need to do 10-finger breathing. one of the things I love about this is, let's say you're waiting in a waiting room of a doctor's office. You really don't want your child roaring. No, if they need to roar, they can roar. But, this is a nice portable tool that can go anywhere. It can go to grandma's house. It can go to the classroom. And it doesn't have to be outstretched in front of them once they know what they're doing. It can be, resting on a leg. And this is something I love to teach to entire schools, so that everyone uses that as a tool. And yeah,
I was going to say, I love the multisensory approach of it, because when I first started doing it, I wasn't making a sound, but the more I listened to you, Lindsey, as you did it, it actually reminded me of ocean waves. And so you're getting this auditory response of rhythm. You're getting the touch sensation of your fingers. And then, your vision, this sounds funny, but just visually watching it, it's like it takes my system and it synchronizes it so that I'm getting a visual, auditory, and touch harmonization. And I think that blend was something I wasn't expecting, but that was very calming. So I love that. I love that system.
Yeah, I loved it too. It calmed me down. Now I'm a better host, and we're going to have a way better podcast because of that. So thank you so much.
It only took halfway in to get there.
I'm going to do that every time.
People can go to YouTube and key in 5-finger breathing, and there's a couple of different videos. Some of them I don't like. Some of them I like a lot. So find the one that kind of appeals to you, to get that visual, to really get it if you need it.
Yeah.
I do think visuals help. Yeah.
And it's such a simple concept, but really I think a lot of success we have, not just with our special needs children, but with with even just our peers and our work relationships. Being aware of our level of regulation plays so into having successful relationships and successful interactions. I can't tell you how many times as a parent my go-to is the authoritative, do what I say because I said it approach. And if you don't, I just get more loud and elevated. And what that's really doing is dysregulating the situation. And the more I get somebody out of their mind and their body's taking over, the less they are even capable of executing the thing I want. So you have to reverse engineer and ask the question, is my child or is this person even in a state to be able to respond? And if not, switch gears. It's got to be regulation first, and then we can get to the cognition and the instruction.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. I see a lot of people when their child's having a hard time, trying to help, oh, you're really upset right now. What can I do? I'm going to hold you. I'm going to do this to you. I'm going to help you this way. I'm going to do this. And the child doesn't have a chance to reset. So my advice when a child's really having a rough time, is if you can reduce the stimulation, the lighting, if possible, or if you're not in a room that you can manage the lighting, get to a more dimly lit area, if possible. That's going to automatically change things and reduce the number of words you use. You don't have to have a conversation then. It's not a teachable moment, a meltdown, right? It's just, we're going to be quiet. And when you're feeling better, we can talk about it. Maybe we can start slow dancing together to reconnect. I love dancing with kids. That's not it's one of my go-tos. I have wonderful vibrating plates that I'd love to get kids on for total body vibration, which is a real game changer for a lot of people. But there's nothing like putting on ABBA and dancing or whatever they're into. ABBA seems to work consistently. Something special
on multiple levels.
Yeah. But dancing, that kind of movement, just joyful, fun. About having some fun. Life is so serious.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I love about your work is that as an occupational therapist, it's like a license to have fun. And we talk about this a lot in our podcast about playing with your child, and don't worry about so much of the rules of play. Just play, be in their environment, be with them, make those connections. And if it's hey, we're going to be alligators right now, and our alligators are climbing up a building, that's what we're doing. Even though that sounds silly and fun, but it's play. You've done so much, Lindsey. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. You have multiple books out. One of the books out that you have that's really popular, it's called Raising a Sensory Smart Child. You do a lot of training. If you wouldn't mind, tell me, like, what is the core of your inspiration? What inspires you to do the great work that you do?
Oh, that's such a lovely question. Thank you for asking that question. Um, you know, maybe a little bit of an origin story. I became an occupational therapist. I worked as a writer for many years, and that's what I was doing. I found that I was not writing any books, and I was writing a lot of junk mail. And it's like, who wants to spend their life writing junk mail? So I hired a tutor for my stepson who was struggling in math, and I was useless beyond second grade math. So I hired this very smart woman who was going to OT school, and um, I'm like, "That sounds really good." I found out about it, so I went to OT school, and my thought was, I'm going to go into adult mental health. That's what was floating my boat. I didn't want to become a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I like the idea of the practical assistance. And I got a scholarship to NYU, full scholarship, which was great. Getting a master's degree at no cost, that was incredible. But I had to work for the New York City school system, which was not my goal. But, I'm in these schools and I'm seeing these kids who just are, not thriving. And it really disturbed me. And it reminded me of things from my childhood that were really hard, like fluorescent lights and falling asleep in class and getting in trouble because the fluorescent lights I would shut down. Um, and just like all these things, like what's going on with them? And this is back in the days where there were not books out about sensory processing. Um, there was Temple Grandin's Thinking in Pictures, and she touched on that, um, the sensory piece there, but it was her sensory experience. It wasn't an overarching kind of thing. And I became fascinated and I wanted to figure out what could help. And of course, in the academic OT world, we knew the techniques, but I felt that parents and teachers didn't know the techniques. And because I might see a child maybe at best 2-3 times a week for 30 to 60 minutes, that wasn't going to change their world. I needed to teach parents and teachers and other clinicians what to do. So kids were getting help, 24 hours a day, because we're living in a 24-hour a day sensory rich world. So that really inspired me in getting to work more and more with autistic kids and teenagers and adults. Just really inspires me because I can make such a big difference. And I've figured out a lot of things, and neurologists have a lot of information and researchers, and it's very exciting to share that. I just spoke at a conference on, it was the Hudson Valley Autism Conference, and I spoke about sound sensitivity. And the autistic adults in the audience there as self-advocates were just like, their heads were bobbing up and down with excitement because, and I could see proverbial light bulbs turning on over their heads that they were making those connections. And that is so inspiring. And, it's pretty funny to have to quit being a writer to actually write 2 books.
I'm listening to you, Lindsey, and I love the mission. My wife and I's experience when our son was first diagnosed, autism seemed like it was a very lonely world. Like there are all these supports out there, but they're somewhat disjointed in that they're separated in how they operate and how they bill and how they correlate one with another. it almost seems like they're not always in harmony. One practitioner might say one thing which is in complete disagreement with another. And as a parent, you're left going, what is this world I've stepped into? And so the foresight for you to say, hey, 20, 30 minutes a few times a week is not enough. We need to empower the people that are with them all the time and educate in a holistic way. These are the tools and resources, and they're situational, and they may vary person to person and child to child, but giving that educational tool and resource, like I can't thank you enough for. You've kind of coined a term, and we started the podcast with it. You call it sensory smart.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that across varying levels, sensory smart for schools, for families, for kids. Can you tell me a bit more where that sensory smart term came from? What does it mean? What's its context?
So, sensory smarts, it's like having smarts about your life, right? We talk about like street smarts, right? You know how to walk down the street and navigate it, and you're good and everything's fine. So sensory smarts is really about understanding the senses, more importantly, understanding how your sensory system works, what in the environment does and does not work for you, how to address the environment to make it work for you and make it all work. So that's having and also self-advocating, right? It starts with really understanding yourself and then self-advocating. So that's the idea behind sensory smarts. And it's, there's so many things we keep talking about, how can we get autistic people to get better, and I'm making air quotes here, so that they can fit into our neurotypical world. Instead, we should be asking, how can we engage autistic people in the neurotypical world? Or just, I'm not putting it the way I want to. How can we make the world conducive and inclusive of everyone? Right? Thinking about modifications in the environment, thinking about those curb cuts. Everybody loves those, right? They were started to make for people with wheelchairs, right? To have a curb cut to cross the street. And meanwhile, everyone who has ever pushed a stroller or wheeled a suitcase or, a hand truck loves it. It benefits everyone. So this is, our great goal is kind of that universal access for everyone to be able to enjoy our sensory rich world.
I love it. I love the perspective. And, thanks for drawing that parallel on the curb cuts. You make an accommodation for a group, but really everybody is better for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to agree, one of the things we did in our schools was we were super conscious about autism architecture and sensory design. And there's so much you can do in a space that really, when it was finished, everybody, our teachers, our staff, were like, this is such a better work environment, let alone a place for those that are sensory conscious. And so
Yes.
I can't speak to that enough. I think though, the more we are aware of inclusion, the more the world just becomes more inviting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And, for parents, there's some simple hacks, sensory hacks that can make a huge difference at home. Installing a $20 dimmer switch, easy fix. And if you don't know how to do it, I don't personally know how to do it. My husband does it. But, I suppose, there are videos on YouTube for doing that. Replacing light bulbs with what we call smart bulbs, right? That you can adjust during the course. You can have that lovely golden hour light in your home that is so relaxing and peaceful. Adding some sound absorbing materials to a bathroom can make self-care tasks so much more comfortable for your child and for you. So there's lots of things, and a good 1/3 of raising a sensory smart child consists of strategies that parents can use in their homes, or, and out and about with their kids too. How do you deal with sunblock? How do you deal with brushing teeth? Shampoo, washing your hair, all these different challenges that people are facing. And there's lots of hacks that can be done.
Well, and that's what I like about your message, is that it impacts an entire, not just one group of people with our autistic friends, but everybody. Everybody can do this. Again, I'm just going to go back to that sensory hack of the breathing, the 5-finger. That made a big impact to me. I'm going to be doing that every day, especially before a podcast. You made me a better person today. So thank you so much, Lindsey. And as we kind of wrap up, just wanted to ask, what is one simple sensory tip for our listeners that they can do today that can make a big difference? I know we did the breathing, which was big for me. Any other, sensory tips that you would like to share with our wonderful families out there?
There are so many. I wrote a whole book of them.
And
is that what it is?
And we'll leave resources to some of your books and stuff in the notes of the podcast for those that want to follow up. We know there's a plethora. If there's one that comes to mind or stands out just as a parting gift for our listening group.
Okay. So one of the things, there's so many. Just chewing a piece of gum can refocus someone if they're not going to swallow it. But ability aside, if a person is willing and interested, I am very big on hand massages and foot massages. So with lotion, just really getting all the nerve endings stimulated and soothed. And if you just take your hand, we're back into our hands, just take your hand and use your thumb and really go into the palm of the hand, those big meaty muscles, and just sort of rub them. It feels really good and soothing. And kids really love this because they spend so much time with their hands clenched out of tension or, avoidance sometimes. So when you're home with your child, just to get into those hands can be really good. And another thing I'll leave you with is hand briskly rubbing. Take your hands and rub them together, right? Palms
like the Mr.
together.
Miyagi type thing a little bit?
Maybe. Now you've done 2 surfaces. Let's do the third surface. You're going to take the palm of one hand and put it on the back of another hand and rub there.
I'm doing this with you. So
Third
I'm so
surface.
glad you're showing this.
Now we're going to go to the fourth one. That's the top of the other hand. You're going to rub there. This is something a child can do for themselves if they won't accept massage from you. Now, feel your hands. Are they like tingly? They're all tingly. Number one, you just learned how to wash your hands properly. So that's a good thing, right? Especially if you go, if I do it with kids, I'll get each individual finger. Number two, you've just kind of regulated your hands. And we interact with the world so much through our hands, right?
Yeah.
This is what we're using for our self-care activities, for our handwriting, for touching a loved one. So all of that.
And it almost has a cascade effect because it starts in your hand, but then it calms the connecting muscles in your arms, and all of a sudden my shoulders are looser. And I love the compound effect. That's wonderful.
Great.
So, Nathan, if I ever do that when you're talking to me, just know that I'm just trying to prepare myself for your instructions.
Love it. Lindsey,
you guys are a blast.
Thank you for such simple approaches. These are things that we could use today. That's what we want. And honestly, can't thank you enough for your work in the field, for the influence. And we're so excited to have introduced you to our listening group, to our parents, and to provide and share some of these wonderful resources.
Fabulous. So, and they can see, I've got a load of magazine articles and webcasts and sensory checklists on the sensorysmarts.com website.
Perfect.
And we'll put that all up on our podcast.
Great.
Lindsey, thank you so much for making us part of your day. And we also want to thank our audience for making us part of your day today. Please don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a conversation that inspires connection. Wanted to give a special thank you to our producer, Jesse Palmer, our marketing director, Dallin Davis. Until next time, let's do some good.